All right, when we talk about treating addiction, there are a lot of different tools out there. But today, we're going to dive into one of the most unique ones, a medication called naltrexone. And let me tell you, the way this thing works is, well, it's pretty fascinating. So let's start with a big question. What if there was a drug that could literally block a high, but wasn't addictive itself? What if you could take a pill or get a shot that just turns off the good feelings from alcohol or opioids? That's the exact idea behind naltrexone, and it's why it's such a game changer. So, what is this stuff? Officially, it's called an opioid antagonist, but honestly, it's more important to know what it isn't, and this is huge. It's not a narcotic, it is not addictive, and it doesn't cause any physical dependence. Right away, that puts it in a whole different league from the drugs it's designed to fight. Okay, so how is that even possible? To get it, we've got to take a look inside the brain, where it works in a really clever and, surprisingly simple way. All right, the best way to think about this is like a lock and key. All throughout your brain, you've got these little things called opioid receptors. Those are the locks. Now, opioids, like heroin or even prescription painkillers, they're the keys. They slide into the lock, they turn it, and boom, you get that feeling of euphoria, that high. So where does naltrexone fit in? Well, naltrexone is like a dummy key. It's cut perfectly to fit the lock, it slides right in, but it doesn't turn. It just sits there, completely blocking the keyhole. And as long as it's in there, no other key can get in. And the result? It's so simple, but it's profound. If someone uses opioids while naltrexone is in their system, nothing happens. The high is completely blocked. The key can't get in the lock. And just like that, you take away the main reason for using the drug in the first place. You're basically breaking a key link in that whole cycle of addiction. So this medication has two main jobs, two big missions it's FDA approved for, fighting both alcohol and opioid addiction. And it's interesting, it works just a little bit differently for each one. Let's break it down. When you're talking about alcohol, naltrexone kind of dulls the rewarding feeling you get from drinking. It makes it less enjoyable, so over time, the cravings start to fade. But for opioids, it's not subtle at all. It's like a brick wall. It completely and totally blocks the euphoric effects. No high. Period. But, and this is really important to get, naltrexone isn't some kind of magic cure. You can't just take it and expect everything to be fixed. Think of it as a tool. A really powerful tool for sure, but one that works best when it's part of a bigger plan. One that includes counseling, therapy, and a solid support system to deal with the psychological side of things. Okay, I need to pause here for a second because there is a critical warning, especially for anyone looking at naltrexone for opioid addiction. This is something you absolutely have to know. It's non-negotiable. You must be completely opioid-free for at least 7 to 10 days before starting naltrexone. I'm serious. If you take it too soon, while opioids are still in your system, naltrexone will act like an eject button. It'll rip all those opioids off your brain's receptors all at once, and that will trigger severe, immediate, and frankly, brutal withdrawal. It's a dangerous medical situation called precipitated withdrawal. All right, so assuming someone is a good candidate and they've gone through that detox period, how do they actually take it? Well, there are two main choices, and each one has its own pros and cons. So you've got two paths here. First, there's the daily pill. It's about 50 milligrams. You take it every day. The upside is it's flexible. The downside, you have to remember and make the choice to take it every single day. Then you have the other option, the monthly injection. You probably know it by the brand name Vivitrol. This takes away that daily decision. You get the shot and you're covered for a whole month. But it's usually more expensive and you have to go to a clinic to get it done. Okay, now just when you think you've got this drug all figured out, the story takes a really surprising twist. This is where it gets wild. 1/10. That's it, just 1/10. What on earth could that mean? Well, it turns out that's the dose, about 1/10 of the normal amount. That's being studied for a completely different reason. Yeah, researchers are looking at what's called low-dose naltrexone, or LDN, and at this tiny dose, it seems to have anti-inflammatory and immune-modulating effects. Basically, it might help calm down an overactive immune system. So it's being explored for things totally unrelated to addiction, like autoimmune diseases, think MS or Crohn's, and even for chronic pain conditions like fibromyalgia. It's a whole new, really fascinating frontier for this drug. But look, whether we're talking about the standard dose for addiction or this new low dose, naltrexone is a serious medication, so we absolutely have to cover the fine print, the risks and the things you need to consider.
Okay, so some of the more common side effects you might see are things like nausea, that's the big one, headaches, dizziness, maybe some fatigue. Usually, these tend to fade over time. And of course, if you get the shot, you might have some pain or swelling right where you got it.
Now for the more serious stuff. First, it can affect the liver, so doctors need to monitor your liver health. It's definitely not for people with severe liver problems. Second, and this is a huge real-world issue. Remember how it blocks opioids? Well, that also means it blocks opioid painkillers. So if you're on naltrexone and you get in a car accident or need emergency surgery, managing your pain becomes incredibly complicated. It's something that absolutely has to be in your medical records. And that really brings us to the bottom line here. Naltrexone is, without a doubt, a powerful tool, but it's not something you mess around with. It absolutely has to be used under close medical supervision to make sure it's being used safely and effectively. So it leaves us with this really cool question, doesn't it? This drug started its life as this blocker key for addiction, but now its story is expanding. We're seeing it might be able to help with the immune system, with chronic pain. It just makes you wonder, right? What other locks out there could this key possibly fit? What else could naltrexone unlock for the future of medicine?